Thermo Scientific TZ-32 rotor for the Thermo Scientific WX Plus ultracentrifuge. How to use video. Section 1. Introduction. The Thermo Scientific TZ-32 rotor for the Thermo Scientific WX Plus ultracentrifuge is a zonal rotor recommended for density gradient separation of a large amount of sample, like lithoproteins, viruses, and particulates of 20S and above. If the rotor is used in a manner not specified by the manufacturer, the protection provided by the equipment may be impaired. This rotor should be operated by trained specialists only. Do not use samples that are inflammable or explosive. This video is describing how to use the TZ-32 rotor for dynamic loading and unloading of a density gradient for batch zonal operations. The rotor is composed of a rotor body, cover, septa, shaft assembly, and cap assembly. The seal assembly is mounted onto the rotor shaft to inject a sample into the spinning rotor. The guard plate assembly supports the seal assembly. The shield plate is mounted on top of the rotor chamber. To run the TZ-32 rotor, we should prepare with tubing set, pump, containers with overlay solution, sample, density layer solutions, and extraction solution, and cold water loop. How to use video. Section 2. Prepare the rotor. Apply a thin coat of vacuum grease to the seal packing and O-ring. Put the seal packing and metal ring into the rotor. Be careful not to set the seal packing upside down. Put the O-ring into the extrusion of the center bottom of the rotor. Apply a thin coat of vacuum grease to the O-ring. Put the Reuland seal and O-ring into the shaft. Be careful not to scratch the Reuland seal surface by a fingernail. When inserting the seal, carefully push it with the soft portion of finger applied. Put the shaft into the septa. Put the assembled septa into the rotor. Fit the hole in the bottom end of the shaft onto the extrusion on the rotor bottom where the O-ring is inserted. Through the upper surfaces of both rotor and septa will be flush with each other. Put the rotor on the fixed holder base. Put grease on the rotor threads. Put the cover onto the rotor containing the septa and screw in the cover by hand. Fasten the cover using the handle until the match mark on the cover meets that on the rotor body. The stopper is an important item. Fit it correctly with the bolt part underneath. If by any chance you happen to fit it upside down or forget to fit it, the cap will come off during high-speed operation and cause a serious accident. Please check the stopper. How to use video. Section 3. Prepare the centrifuge. Turn off the centrifuge main switch. Remove the 3 screws from the centrifuge sensor cover. Lift gently the sensor cover and disconnect its electrical cable. Remove the seal from the sensor cover. Insert the sensor cover into the seal rubber. Reconnect its electrical cable. Secure the seal rubber with the sensor cover using the 3 screws. Turn on the centrifuge main switch. Mount the 3 supports onto the fixed pieces in the rotor chamber of the centrifuge. Put the rotor on the spinning shaft. Mount the guard plate. The guard plate can be fixed by inserting first the end of the fixed block into the left hole on the support, erecting the right knob and then turning it to the horizontal. Tighten the screws once the guard plate is set in place. To center the guard plate, Loosen the 3 screws in the base and adjust until the center of the rotor shaft coincides with that of the base. Tighten the screws to fix the base. The guard plate must be kept as possible to the horizontal. Place a spirit level on the base to confirm the horizontality in all directions. To adjust the height of the guard plate, loosen the 3 set screws and turn the case. Turning clockwise lowers it, while turning counterclockwise lifts it. The correct distance to the rotor is 35 to 36 mm. After adjustment, tighten the 3 set screws to fix the case. The 2 higher ones of the 4 pipes led from the cell assembly are used for injection into or extraction from the rotor. The outer one is led to the rotor edge and the center one is led to the center of the rotor. The 2 remaining pipes are used for cooling when necessary. Cooling water is needed for cooling the contact body which touches the seal. Use city water as coolant in case centrifuge is to be done at normal temperature. However, use cold water when centrifuge is to be done at temperature below 5 degrees C. The minimum flow rate required is 450 ml per minute. Use pipes with an inner diameter of 3.2 mm. How to use video. Section 4. Operation. Leakage test. Check the seal assembly for leakage before injecting a gradient solution into the rotor. This check should be done by injecting overlay solution into the rotor by the pump. Check the seal assembly in the following procedure. Set to zonal operation mode from panel. Set operating factors for high-speed spinning. Press the start switch to regulate the rotor speed to 3000 rpm. Run the cooling water when necessary. Please check to see if there is any wobbling at 3000 rpm. Mount the seal assembly with the tubes connected. First press it down and push it vertically about the center of rotation. After doing this, tightening it by turning it clockwise and release it when it touches the rubber stopper. Do not take your hand away until the seal assembly is properly in place. Inject about 100 ml of overlay solution by the pump at maximum flow rate 100 ml per minute through the edge port pipe. Check for no leakage at the seal assembly and that air bubbles are coming out the pipe on the rotor center. Mount the shield plate. Put the tube seller side of the shield plate to right or left end of the rotor chamber in the centrifuge. How to use video. Section 5A. Operation. Injection case A. Injection in case A is applicable when the sample density is similar and higher than the overlay density. Make the temperature of the sample and the solutions and the setting temperature of the rotor when spinning as equal as possible. Feed the gradient solution by pump, starting with the light end first through the edge port. Typical flow rate is 50 ml per minute. Connect one end of the edge port pipe to the pump and the other one to the clamp. Put one end of the center port pipe into a beaker containing overlay and clamp the other end. Select injection speed so pressure at the seal is below 1 bar. Special care should be exercised in selecting an injection speed for a high viscosity liquid such as sucrose. The lower density solution volume will be ranging from 500 to 1500 ml and a higher density from 500 to 1000 ml coming to a total of 1700 milliliters. When the lightest gradient solution is coming through the rotor, clamp both ends of the pipe and stop the pump. Inject a sample and overlay by injector through the center port. Typical flow rate is 25 milliliters per minute. Clamp the end of the H port pipe on the pump side and put the other end into a beaker for receiving the cushion discharge due to injection of sample and overlay. Inject a sample, typical volume is 50 to 200 milliliters, by an injector through the center port pipe, then feed an overlay, typical volume is 75 milliliters, into the rotor. Bubbles will be removed through the pipe on the rotor center. Do not feed bubbles when injecting a density gradient solution and sample, otherwise the gradient solution and sample will be disturbed. If bubbles are about to enter, lead them to another tube from the T by setting upright the tube containing bubbles before they pass through. How to use video. Section 5B. Operation. Injection case B. Injection in case B is applicable when the sample density is higher than the overlay density. Make the temperature of the sample and the solutions and the setting temperature of the rotor when spinning as equal as possible. Feed an overlay, sample, and then gradient solution by pump, starting with the light end first through the H port. Typical flow rate is 50 milliliters per minute. Connect one hand of the H port pipe to the pump and the other one to the clamp. Put one end of the center port pipe into a beaker containing water and clamp the other end. Select injection speed so pressure at the seal is below 1 bar. Special care should be exercised in selecting an injection fluid for a high viscosity liquid such as sucrose. The gradient solution volume should be about 60% of the rotor volume. When the overlay solution is coming through the rotor, clamp both hands of the pipe and stop the pump. Inject an overlay by injector through the center port. Typical flow rate is 25 milliliters per minute. Clamp the end of the H port pipe on the pump side and put the other end into a beaker for receiving the cushion discharge due to injection of overlay. Typical volume is 15 milliliters. Bubbles will be removed through the pipe on the rotor center. Do not feed bubbles while injecting a density gradient solution and sample, otherwise the gradient solution and sample will be disturbed. If bubbles are about to enter, lead them to another tube from the T by setting upright the tube containing bubbles before they pass through. How to use video. Section 6. Operation. High-speed spinning. Never raise the rotor speed to more than 5000 rpm with the rotor not filled with the solution to full extent. High-speed spinning of the rotor not full of the solution will cause the septa to be damaged. Remove the tube from the tube setter and then the shield plate. Clamp each pipe between the T and the seal assembly and remove the seal assembly. The seal assembly can be pulled upwards when it touches the stopper while turning it counterclockwise by hand. Place the cap. Hold the upper fringe and push it onto the shaft downwards. Make sure that the cap, once set completely, will not come off the shaft even when it's pulled holding the fringe. Check that the cap is set completely. Close the door, press the vacuum switch, press the start switch and accelerate from 3000 rpm to high speed operation. When the timer counts down to 0 or by pressing the stop switch, the rotor decelerates to 3000 rpm. How to use video. Section 7. Operation. Extraction. Prepare extraction solution, volume 1800 to 2000 milliliters, being about 5% weight by weight heavier than the gradient at the periphery of the rotor. Prime by pump the H-port pipe and remove completely air bubbles. Then reclamp each pipe between the T and the seal assembly. When preparation for extraction is complete and the rotor speed is 3000 rpm, press the vacuum switch and open the door carefully. Remove the cap while the rotor is spinning. Hold the running cap by both hands. Pull it upwards while pushing the center extrusion. Mount the seal assembly. Keep the seal assembly as horizontal as possible and center it visually. Lower the seal assembly vertically onto the seal surface and mount it quickly, taking care not to hit the adapter on the seal surface. Never incline the seal assembly when mounting. Set the shield plate carefully in position. Remove the clamp to open the in and out lines to the seal assembly. Do not feed bubbles into the rotor at unloading. Special care should be exercised in selecting an injection speed for a high viscosity liquid such as sucrose. For 60% solution of sucrose, the injection speed is limited to approximately 35 ml per minute. Check the lines once again and inject by pump the extraction solution through the H-port to unload the separated fractions. Connect one hand of the H-port pipe to the pump and the other one to the clamp. Clamp one end of the center port pipe and lead the other end to a fraction collector through a spectrophotometer flow cell or collect fractions in multiple test tubes for offline analysis. The fractions are extracted in order from the center of the rotor, light density first. How to use video. Section 8. Operation, stopping and disassembling. When the quantity of extraction solution reaches 1700 ml, the fractions inside the rotor will all have been discharged. At this point, stop the pump. Stopping the centrifuge is done by pressing the zonal switch. Once rotor has come to stop, reverse the pump direction, let air in the center port pipe and discharge leftover extraction solution by pump. After that, carefully remove the shield plate and, to prevent any of the solution coming out, clamp the hose connected to the inlet and outlet of the seal assembly. Take off the guard plate and then the rotor. Put the rotor on the fixed holder base and remove the stopper, the rotor cover, the septa, and the shaft. Be careful when taking out the metal ring and the seal packing not to damage them in any way. Always place them on an even surface to avoid deformation. How to use video. Section 9. Maintenance. Rotor inspection and life. Check the rotor after every use. If the optical adapter disc is unclean, wipe it with soft cloth, but do not damage it. If the rotor appears to be corroded, deformation, cracks, or discoloration is observed, do not use the rotor. Refer to the manual for rotor lifetime specification. Cleaning. Wash each part with distilled water at 40 to 50 degrees C after use and wipe off water with a soft cloth. After fully drying it, coat it with stop coat grease. Sterilization. Sterilize the rotor appropriately according to the manual. Do not autoclave the rotor or sterilize it with boiling water. Consumable. Please change the seal packing once a year. The stopper and the O-rings should be changed at 3 to 6 month intervals. The adapter of the seal assembly should be changed every 3 months. Change the seal assembly ball bearing if it makes noise when turned by hand. Handling of seal and renewal. Do not scratch the seal upper surface or sample may leak due to poor sealing. Slightly scratched or worn seal can be reconditioned by polishing. The flat portion of the zonal rotor cover can be used for polishing the seal. Put fine sandpaper, number 800 is recommendable, on the rotor cover and polish the contact surface until it becomes even. Disassembling and cleaning the seal assembly. Loosen screws and detach the holder cover, the spring holder, spring, and ring. Remove the body, guide body, and coil spring. Remove the circlip and pull out the adapter and ball bearing. Fully clean the body, housing, and ball bearing. Disassembling and cleaning the cap assembly. The cap must be cleaned each time after the use by wiping away any solution. Make sure that the cylinder case moves up and down smoothly. If the inside of the groove part becomes corroded, change the entire cap.